Of all the Emperor's sons, only one was a hunter of secrets before he was anything else. The lion grew up alone in the death-world forests of Caliban, hunting monsters in the dark before he could speak, learning to read a trail no one else could see, learning to trust no one and suspect everyone. He became the Imperium's first knight, its greatest strategist, and the keeper of more secrets than any Primarch alive, including the one that damned his own legion. He hid the truth of Caliban. He hid his war with Luther. He hid so much, for so long, that even his brothers never knew what he was really doing. And now, after 10,000 years lost in the warp, the lion has come back. The galaxy is broken open, the old lies are surfacing, and the one Primarch with the instincts of a born investigator is awake and walking again. So here is the question that should terrify whoever buried the second and the 11th. The Imperium spent 10,000 years making sure no one could find the lost Primarchs. It did all of that work before the only brother who could actually find them came home. If the lion ever decides to hunt for the 11th, he will catch him. Let me be precise about what this video is and what it is not, because the audience for this channel does not reward sloppiness. This is not a claim that Games Workshop has shown the lion searching for the lost sons. It has not. His return storylines do not touch the second or the 11th at all. This is a claim about capability. It is an argument built entirely from the lion's established character, the tracker, the secret keeper, the suspicious mind, applied to a problem he has never canonically been handed. We are not telling you it happened. We are asking what would happen if it ever did. And to answer that, you have to start where he started. You have to start on Caliban. Caliban was a death world. The Lexicanum and Games Workshop's own material agree on this. A forest planet sitting close to the Eye of Terror. Its woods stalked by creatures called great beasts, each one a unique horror. Each one, when you read how they are described in Descent of Angels, Mitchell Scanlan's novel from 2007, sounding distinctly tainted by chaos. Into that world fell a gestation capsule carrying one of the Emperor's 20 engineered sons. It landed far from any human settlement, and then something happened that happened to no other Primarch in quite this way. Nobody found him. Not for years. The records are blunt about it. There is no account of how he survived. He lived in the jungle for roughly a decade, alone, a child with no name, no language, no order, no Luther, nothing but the forest and the things that hunted in it. Sit with that, because it is the engine of everything that follows. Every other Primarch landed somewhere with people. Horus had the Emperor almost from the start.
Guilliman had a noble house and a city and a name within days.
Russ ran with wolves, but he ran with a pack, and a pack teaches you. The lion had nothing and no one, no teacher, no language, no second pair of eyes to warn him what was coming. On a world like Caliban, that is a death sentence for almost anything that draws breath. And the things that draw breath there are chaos-warped monsters bred specifically to end you. He should not have survived a season. He survived a decade. And you do not survive a decade alone in a forest full of apex predators by being strong. Strength buys you one bad encounter. You survive by never having the bad encounter, by knowing where the beast is before it knows where you are, by reading the woods so completely that you are never surprised. He learned to survive a world built to eat him by becoming better at the hunt than the things hunting him.
He learned to read a forest, to see where a beast had passed, to know what had moved through the dark before he ever saw it, to track. His first and deepest skill, before strategy, before knighthood, before he could even speak Low Gothic, was finding things that did not want to be found. Pin the pronunciation now, because the audience will,
It is Lion L. Johnson, and it is Caliban. Hold both, they matter. When the Knights of the Order finally found him, they nearly destroyed him. He was so feral, so dangerous that the judgment of the group was that he should be treated as one of the great beasts and put down. One man overruled them. His name was Luther, and that name is going to matter more than any other in this story. Luther looked at the most dangerous thing in the forest and decided to bring it home instead.
He named the boy Lion L. Johnson, which in the Calibanite dialect means the lion, the son of the forest, named for the fiercest of all the great beasts, the Calibanite lion itself. And then he handed the greatest hunter the planet had ever produced a cause. Within a single decade, the Order, led by Johnson, hunted Caliban's great beast to the edge of extinction. In Descent of Angels, the lion tells the young knight Authorial that the work is nearly done, that only the North Wilds, the deepest and most impenetrable forest on the planet, still holds the beasts at all. He had found and run down almost everything the planet could hide. That is the first thing the canon tells you about him, before anything else. He is the one who finds what is hidden and finishes it. Now hold that against the second thing the canon tells you, because here is where it gets stranger. The hunter who could find anything became the Primarch who hid everything. The lion's defining adult trait is not strategy, though he is the finest strategist of his generation. It is not honor, though he has it. His defining trait is secrecy, a secrecy so total it isolated him from his own brothers and, in the end, from his own legion. Games Workshop's official article on him says it without flinching. He earned a reputation as a frighteningly effective warlord, too wrapped up in secrets for many of his brothers' tastes. The wikis go harder. He is described as paranoid, secretive, incapable of trusting others fully, even those closest to him. One line is worth quoting exactly, because it is the whole man in a sentence. Johnson, ever doubting of the truth in others, could not understand trust given, nor received. He assumed everyone was lying. He kept his own counsel. His true motives, in Gav Thorpe's Angels of Caliban from 2016, are known to a vanishingly small few, and his brother Kurz accuses him of running secret operations, ordering covert orbital strikes, pitting brothers against each other, all from behind a wall of withheld information. And the secrecy was not a quirk. It cost him everything, and it cost the man who saved him more. Trace it forward. Luther, the one knight who looked at a feral monster and chose to bring it home, became the lion's second, his closest companion, the nearest thing to a father the Primarch ever had. And the lion would not confide in him. The wikis are direct about the consequence. The lion's failure to share what he knew, his habit of hoarding decisions and explaining nothing, fed a slow resentment in Luther that the chaos powers eventually used as a lever. The man who saved the hunter from the forest was turned against him, in part by the hunter's own refusal to let anyone inside his head. By the time of Angels of Caliban, that pattern has metastasized into open conflict. The lion's single-mindedness begins breaking apart the fragile structure of Imperium Secundus, the emergency government the Loyalists built when they thought the Emperor was lost. His brother Kurz, himself no model of trust, accuses him to his face of running covert operations, of ordering secret orbital strikes, of pitting brothers against one another, all from behind a wall of withheld information. And the accusations are not baseless. The lion does operate that way. His true motives, the novel tells us, are known to a few indeed. He builds plans inside plans and shows you the outer shell and never the core. So fix this in place before we go further. This is a being whose instinct, when he knows something dangerous, is to tell no one and act alone. That instinct is going to matter enormously when we ask what he does with a secret he has not been handed, but might find on his own.
And here is the thing nobody says often enough, the connection this whole video turns on. A master of hiding things is, necessarily, a master of finding them. They are not two skills. They are one skill seen from opposite sides. To hide something perfectly, you have to understand exactly how it would be found, every trail it would leave, every gap it would create, every question its absence would raise. And then you close all of those off, one by one. That is the same mental act as tracking. The hunter who can read where a beast passed through a forest is using the identical faculty as the conspirator who can read where a truth has been removed from a record. The lion spent his life on both sides of that single skill. He is the only Primarch who was a master tracker as a child and a master concealer as an adult. He knows how the hunt works from inside the prey. You want proof that he could see what others could not.
The canon hands it to you, and it is the most important fact in this entire case. In Descent of Angels, the Emperor himself comes to Caliban. The Emperor, the most perceptive being in the galaxy, a psyker beyond all measure, walks the surface of that planet and does not sense the chaos taint buried beneath it. The lion does. The lion had always known. There is a malign presence deep under the North Wilds, a corruption that was the true source of the great beasts, and the young Primarch had sensed it where his own father, standing on the same ground, sensed nothing. And what did he do with that knowledge? He buried it. He told no one. He calculated that if he revealed the truth, the Imperium would scour the planet he had grown up on, and might conclude that he himself was tainted, and act accordingly. So he weighed it, and he kept it, and the secret rotted underground for decades. That is the lion in one episode. He perceives what the Emperor cannot, and then he hides it deliberately. Read that twice.
The being who can find what a god cannot find, choosing to conceal. Now ask what that same being does when the thing being hidden is not under his feet, but somewhere out in a broken galaxy, and he is the one who wants to find it. So let's talk about the cover-up. Because the cover-up was real, it was enormous, and it was built against the wrong kind of mind. 2 of the Emperor's 20 sons were erased. The Second Legion and the 11th, their Primarchs, their histories, their names, gone. The mechanism has a name in High Gothic, damnatio memoriae, the condemnation of memory, executed through what the Imperium calls an edict of obliteration. And this was not a sloppy purge. In universe, it is described as the most successful edict of obliteration ever carried out in Imperial history. So complete that not only the legions but the very circumstances of their fate were erased.
We can date it, roughly, through Aaron Dembski-Bowden's The First Heretic from 2010. By the time Lorgar and the Word-Bearers are censured at Monarchia, only 18 legions are referenced. The cut had already happened, at least 4 decades before the drop site massacre. It was early, it was deliberate, and it was thorough. But look at what the edict actually attacks. It strikes records. It recuts statues. It forbids names. It is, at its core, an information destruction operation, a war on archives. And that tells you exactly what kind of investigator it was designed to defeat. It was built to defeat the archivist, the scholar, the inquisitor who pulls a thread in a library and follows the citations. Erase the records, and the man who reads records finds nothing. He hits a blank page and stops. The edict of obliteration is a perfect weapon against anyone who hunts by evidence. The lion does not hunt by evidence. He never has. He is the one investigator in the entire setting who does not start from the archive. Because he learned to track in a forest that kept no records at all. The forest never wrote anything down. There was no library on Caliban telling a feral child where the great beasts denned. He learned to read absence, the bent branch, the missing bird song, the silence where there should have been sound, the shape of where a thing had passed. That is a man who reads what was removed rather than what was left. And the edict of obliteration, for all its perfection, cannot remove an absence. It can strike a name from a list, but it leaves the gap where the name was. It can recut a statue, but the recut is itself a mark. The censor's hand is a trail. Every erasure is evidence of an erasure. The archivist sees a blank and reads nothing. The tracker sees a blank and reads a deletion. The cover-up was built to make sure no one could read the records. It never imagined a hunter who doesn't.
So get specific. What would the lion actually notice? Not the scrubbed files. Those are gone, and he knows they're gone, and that itself tells him something. He would notice the shape of what was removed. He would count the Primarchs, the way this channel's audience counts them, and find the number with nothing attached. He would notice the legion numbering that runs 1 through 20 with 2 holes in it, holes the exact size of a sun. He would notice a founding with no founder, a gap in a sequence that every official record steps carefully around without ever explaining. He assumes, by his nature, that everyone is lying, so a clean, smooth, untroubled official history is not reassurance to him. It is a red flag. A record with no rough edges is a record that has been sanded down, and the sanding is the trail.
He would notice the things that should connect to the missing, and don't. The chapter with no traceable lineage. The institution whose master no one can name. The order that exists in the present but has no documented origin. The cohort threads this channel has been pulling, the Carcharodons who fit the shape of a lost second, the Culexus Temple of the soulless that the 11th story keeps brushing against. Those are not answers. They are anomalies. And anomalies are precisely what a tracker follows. He does not need the records the Imperium destroyed. The destruction left its own outline, and the lion reads outlines for a living. And consider the specific advantage he carries that no inquisitor, no archivist, no remembrancer ever could. He was there. Not for the erasure itself. The cut came after the heresy turned, and he had his own war by then, but for the world before it. The lion stood at the side of his brothers when there were still 20 places set at the table, when the full count of the legions was a living fact and not a forbidden one. He has a memory of the gaps from the inside. He knows, in a way no mortal scholar ever can, what the shape of the original was before pieces were filed out of it. Hand a forged document to a man who never saw the original, and he reads it as truth. Hand it to the man who watched the original being written, and every alteration glows. The lion is the rarest kind of witness to a cover-up, one who outlived it. He went into the warp before the erasure was complete and came out the other side 10,000 years later, which means he is the only person walking the galaxy who remembers the before and is now standing in the after, with the censored version of history laid out in front of him like a map with 2 countries painted over. He doesn't have to reconstruct what was removed. On some level, he already knows there was something there. And there is one more layer, the coldest one. He assumes the lie. That is his default state, where an honest mind reads an official imperial history and accepts it as the record. The lion reads the same history as a document produced by an institution he has personally watched manufacture falsehoods, including falsehoods he manufactured himself.
He knows from the inside that the Imperium edits its own past, because he is one of the men who did the editing. So when the smooth, sanctioned, 10,000-year-old account of the legions hands him 18 names and a polite silence where 2 more should be, he does not feel reassured by the smoothness. He feels the presence of a hand. He has held that hand. He is the one Primarch who would look at the most successful act of historical concealment ever performed and recognize, instantly, a professional at work. Because he is a professional at the same trade.
And here is the part the cover-up's architects could never have planned for, because it was, for 10,000 years, impossible. The hunter was gone. For 10 millennia, the cover-up was safe. Not because it was airtight. Nothing is airtight against the right mind, but because the one mind it was vulnerable to was not in the galaxy. After the fall of Caliban, after his war with Luther tore the planet into the warp and left only the shattered rock behind, the lion was lost. He slept in the depths of that fortress, or wandered something stranger than sleep, for 10,000 years. The single being whose entire psychology was a counter to an edict of obliteration was unavailable the entire time the edict was holding. The cover-up didn't beat the lion. It simply outlasted his absence. There is a difference, and that difference is the whole video. Because now he is back, and the board has changed in 2 ways at once, both of them bad for anyone keeping a 10,000-year-old secret. The first is the lion himself.
In the novel The Lion, Son of the Forest, published by Black Library in 2023, the Primarch wakes after 10,000 years at the heart of the rock into a galaxy he does not recognize. And Games Workshop did not frame his return as a homecoming. They framed it as a hunt. The official announcement was titled, word for word, "The Hunt is On." He emerges in the Imperium nihilus and immediately goes to work tracking, first his own scattered fallen, the lost sons who betrayed him, hunting them across the broken stars by an instinct he himself cannot fully explain. Even in his own return story, the first thing the lion does upon waking is find people who do not want to be found. The fallen had spent 10,000 years not being found. They had scattered, hidden, changed names, gone to ground across the entire galaxy specifically so that the Imperium and their own father could never run them down.
And he started running them down anyway.
Almost the moment his eyes opened, guided by a tracking sense he describes, in the lore, as a feeling he cannot fully explain, drawn toward his hidden sons the way he was once drawn through a forest toward a beast he had not yet seen. That is not me imposing a theme. That is the plot. The very first demonstration the modern canon gives you of the returned lion is a demonstration of exactly the capability this whole video is built on. He wakes up, and he hunts the hidden. The second change is the galaxy. He did not wake into the orderly Imperium he left. He woke into the aftermath of the Great Rift, the Cicatrix Maledictum, the warp storm that tore the Imperium in half after the close of the 41st millennium and created the Imperium Nihilus, the dark half, cut off from Terra, the Astronomican's light obscured, the old certainties failing. And a galaxy cracked open like that is a galaxy where buried things surface.
Think about how a secret that old actually survives. It does not survive because one document was destroyed once. It survives because a vast, centralized, unbroken machine spends 10,000 years continuously not looking. Every generation of scribes inheriting the same blank. Every inquisitor steered around the same gap. The whole apparatus quietly maintaining the silence by sheer institutional inertia. The erasure was a single act. The cover-up is a daily one.
It requires the machine to keep running, and the machine just broke in half. Records that were safe for 10,000 years because no one could reach the worlds that held them are suddenly exposed as the old order collapses. Whole sectors have gone dark and then come back into contact carrying archives no one on Terra has audited in a generation.
Forgotten things, fragments, half-erased data, the kind of inconvenient record that only stays buried as long as someone is actively burying it, are drifting back into the light because the hands that held them down have been cut off behind a wall of warp storms. Secrets that depended on a stable, total Imperium to keep them are leaking out on their own, because the Imperium that did the keeping is broken in two. The cover-up was designed for a galaxy that no longer exists. It was designed for the orderly, centralized, all-seeing Imperium of 10,000 years ago, and that Imperium is gone, replaced by a fractured, half-blind, panicking thing that is losing track of its own past faster than it can reassert control. And into exactly that environment, a galaxy where the old concealments are failing on their own, walks the one brother the concealment was never designed to survive, with his eyes open.
Which brings us to the harder, stranger possibility. The one the audience for this channel actually asks for. Not just that the lion could find the 11th, that he might already have noticed. Think about what he is. A being who reads absence by instinct, returned to a galaxy where absences are suddenly everywhere, where the old smoothness of the official record is cracking and the gaps are showing through. A mind that assumes deception as a baseline, dropped into the single most deceptive structure in human history at the exact moment that structure is failing. Would a man like that walk through the Imperium Nihilis, see the holes in the histories, feel the silence where two of his brothers should be, and not notice? He noticed the taint under his own feet that the Emperor missed. The idea that he would miss a brother-shaped hole in the historical record, when noticing such things is the deepest reflex he has, is harder to believe than the alternative.
One viewer of this channel, going by the handle Jorgensen, wished out loud for a meeting between the lion, Caliban, and Tiberos, the Red Wake, a convergence of exactly the figures who keep orbiting this mystery. It is worth pausing on why that wish lands. It is not a random pairing. It is an instinct that the people who are closest to the 11th's shadow, the cold strategist who reads what is hidden, the rebuilder who is auditing the whole Imperium from the top down, and the Red Wake, whose own bloodline keeps surfacing in these conversations, belong in the same room, because together they are most of the picture. The audience is, in effect, asking for the investigation to be convened, and there is something to that instinct because the canon is, very slowly, building toward the lion and Caliban in the same room. The campaign material teasing their first reunion in 10,000 years includes a message attributed to the lion, written for his brother. 3 words. Brother, we need to talk. We do not know what about, but a Primarch who hoards information, who decides, always, what to reveal and what to keep, who has spent a lifetime calculating exactly when a secret should come out and to whom. That is a Primarch who might be assembling the same picture this audience is, quietly, in the dark, and deciding, in his own time, what to do with it. Now, the honest part, because this channel's audience earns it. None of that is canon. I want to be as clear as the records the Imperium failed to destroy. Games Workshop has never written the lion searching for the 2nd or the 11th. He has never mentioned them. His return arc is occupied with the Fallen, with Cypher, with the Chaos Warbands of the Imperium Nihilus, and now with Caliban and the Rift, not with the Lost Sons.
The case that he would find them rests entirely on his established character, the tracker, the secret keeper, the suspicious mind, applied to a problem the writers have not given him. That is an inference. A strong one, I'd argue, but an inference, and you should hold it as one. And the strongest version of the counter-argument deserves its full weight, so here it is. It is not just that the lion is busy, it is that the lost Primarchs may be a door with nothing behind it. The second and the 11th were not created by an in-universe censor for a clever investigator to one day uncover. They were created by a writer, Rick Priestley, in the earliest days of the setting, deliberately, as an unanswerable blank. In his own words, he built them as unknowable 10,000-year-old mysteries, the kind of thing that begs questions for which there could be no answer. Games Workshop has guarded that emptiness ever since, refusing for decades to fill it in.
So the deepest counter to this whole thesis is not that the lion couldn't track the 11th. It is that there may be no trail at all, because the thing at the end of it was designed never to exist on the page. The greatest tracker in the galaxy can still find nothing if there is, by authorial intent, nothing there to find. Hold that, honestly, against everything else. We are not resolving it. We are not telling you where the 11th is, and we are not naming him, because that is not the question this video asks. The question is narrower and colder than that. The question was never whether the 11th could be found. Drop the whole frame of, is the secret good enough? It was never about the quality of the cover-up. The cover-up was excellent. The records are gone, the statues recut, the names forbidden, the trail scattered across a galaxy too large to ever reassemble from a desk. As a piece of concealment, it is, genuinely, the finest the Imperium ever produced.
None of that was ever the real variable. The real variable was always a single yes or no question that has nothing to do with how well the secret was hidden. Was the one being who hunts by instinct instead of evidence, who reads absence, who assumes everyone is lying, who learned to track in a forest before he learned to speak, available to look? For 10,000 years the answer was no. He was lost in the warp, asleep in the rock, wandering the woods between worlds. The secret was never safe because it was well made. It was safe because the hunter was asleep. He isn't anymore. The hunter is awake. He came back not as a diplomat or a rebuilder, but as a predator, in a galaxy where the lights have gone out and the old hidden things are stirring in the dark, which is, when you think about it, exactly the environment he was made for.
A death world forest at night, full of monsters and buried truths, where the only way to survive is to be the best at finding what doesn't want to be found. He grew up in precisely that place. He has come home to a version of it the size of half the galaxy. And somewhere in all that broken dark, there is a brother-shaped silence the rest of the Imperium has trained itself not to hear. He was never trained. He reads silences for a living. The Imperium spent 10,000 years making the 11th Primarch impossible to find. It scrubbed the records, recut the statues, forbade the names, and scattered the trail across a galaxy so large that no archive could ever reassemble it. And it worked. It worked perfectly, for one reason and one reason only. The single being alive who hunts by instinct instead of evidence, who assumes everyone is lying, who was finding things in the dark before he could speak, was lost in the warp the entire time. He isn't anymore.
The lion has come home to a broken galaxy full of surfacing secrets, and somewhere in that mess is a brother-shaped hole that the rest of the Imperium can't see. He can. He always could. The only thing that ever protected the 11th was the hunter being asleep, and the hunter is awake now.